Hey class, welcome to chapter 14. We're going to discuss managing communication. Let me get the slides up. But I'll just talk about this for a second. Communication is super important, and how staff interpret communication is also super important. Sometimes management communication does not happen with just words. Sometimes it's observed through actions. And oftentimes the things that are observed via action are much more powerful than what's spoken, right? So let's get into these slides here. Great, so we're going to define the nature and function of communication, describe the methods and challenges of interpersonal communication, describe your skill at listening effectively, now to overcome barriers in communication. With electronic communication, interacting with colleagues has actually, I think, become a little bit quicker, obviously, but that comes at some expense in terms of miscommunication. I think obviously the benefits outweigh the cons, but certainly something to consider. Explain how communication can flow most effectively in organizations. Describe how the internet and social media affect managerial communication in organizations. Summarize communication issues in today's organizations. Discuss how to become a better communicator. So what is communication? It's a transfer and understanding of meaning, obviously. There is also interpersonal communication. That's communication between two or more people. Organization communication, all the patterns, networks, and systems of communication within an organization. Next, functions of communication, control. That acts to control behavior in several ways. As we know from chapter 11, organizations have authority and hierarchies and formal guidelines on communication. You're not going to go to your boss's boss before you go to your boss, right? You're going to go to your direct supervisor about any problems, issues, questions that you might have. Then in addition to that, you have motivation, why, emotional expression, like what's the tone about, and then what's the actual information. Message, a purpose to be conveyed. There could be encoding, converting a message into symbols. Channel, the medium of the message travels along, text, email, phone call, voicemail, LinkedIn, Facebook, the list goes on. And if you guys are anything like me, you also have a hierarchy in terms of the channel, right? So I probably respond to a Facebook message last and a text message first, followed by maybe email. And then decoding, retranslating a sender's message, taking that information and then telling others. Something that might have been common during the pandemic is, management from high up going down the chain, and how COVID policies may have been communicated to staff and implemented. Communication process, the 7 elements involved in transferring meaning from one person to another. There's also noise. Those are disturbances that interfere with the transmission, receipt, and feedback of a message. Filler information, stuff that might not be too important but exists. And there can always be noise in a communication, right? With email specifically, I always recommend a clear, concise title in your email. Like the receiver of that email should know the contents of the email before they even open it, based on your title. That's how clear it should be. So which communication method should be used? Feedback. How quickly can the receiver respond? How complex is it? Some things you just want to hop on a call for. If it's complicated, you don't want to go and plan a week vacation over text. It becomes pretty efficient. How many different messages can be transmitted using this method? Is it confidential? Can sender easily and quickly use this channel? One thing I've noticed, encrypted emails are fantastic for security, but some of my older clients have a hard time opening them because the second or third layer of passwords. And then is there a time constraint? Is there a cost? Interpersonal warmth. How well does this method convey interpersonal warmth? Are you being compassionate in your email? Are you asking how someone's doing, even just to ask? How formal is it? Scannability goes back to the title I just mentioned, right? Having good scannability is important. Time of consumption. Does the sender or receiver exercise the most control over when the message is dealt with? A nonverbal communication, I already touched base on this a little bit, transmitted without words. That includes body language, gestures, facial configurations, and other body movements that convey meaning. And then verbal intonation, an emphasis given to words or phrases that convey meaning. Comparison of communication methods, face-to-face, telephone, computer conference, all have high feedback, but like a publication or a flyer obviously has fairly low potential feedback. High complexity capacity, face-to-face, low complexity, bulletin boards, high breadth. Of course, face-to-face is the best for the most complex. But a bulletin board or an email could be used to distribute a generic message to many folks. High encoding ease, one would be telephone. We're going to stick away from face-to-face just because it keeps on being mentioned. High decoding ease, telephone, voicemail, meetings. High cost though. Formal presentations, oftentimes at work, to get me to go to a presentation for someone who's in marketing, they will often have to provide a steak dinner to get people to show up. So you can get people to show up for a conference or an informational session, but what happens is you end up having a pretty costly scenario. Comparison to communication methods. You also have high personal warmth, which would be face-to-face, but high scannability, memos, mail, fax, publication, bulletin boards. Information overload, right? That can happen when information exceeds our processing capacity. This is often, I refer to this as the Cheesecake Factory menu problem. You go to the Cheesecake Factory, there's so many different things. Most people end up defaulting to the same thing they get all the time because they're overwhelmed. There's also filtering, the deliberate manipulation of information to make it appear more favorable to the receiver. Jargon, that's specialized terminology. Sometimes you can even find jargon within a job description. Like, what are they talking about here? And they're using it, the jargon is so used that they just assume outside people know about it too. Overcoming barriers, use feedback, simplify the language, don't make it overly complex. I like to bullet point things in the email. Listen actively. If you don't pay attention, you won't pick up much. Constrain emotions. If someone says something that you might not agree with or you think is a little stupid, try not to make a face, right? That is only going to harm you. And then obviously be aware of nonverbal cues. Nonverbal cues can be helpful if maybe you're potentially speaking not necessarily out of line, but maybe going off in the wrong direction. Active listeners. I always have a hard time doing this, not interrupting. Paraphrase. Always should paraphrase. Avoid distracting actions or gestures. Try not to look at your cell phone or your watch, something I can be a victim of. Make sure you ask questions. Exhibit affirmative head nods and appropriate facial expressions. Let people know you're listening. Show empathy and show interest by making eye contact. Again, don't be staring down at the phone, even though, again, I can be just as bad at that at times too. So formal versus informal communication. Communication that takes place within prescribed organizational work arrangements, and then informal communication that is not defined by the organizational structure hierarchy. Informal, next, downward. Communication that flows downward from managers to employees. This can be in town hall meetings, informal public meetings where information can be relayed. Issues can be discussed, or employees can be brought together to celebrate accomplishments. Upward communication, communication that flows upward from employees to managers. A lateral is communication that takes place among any employee on the same place in the organization. And the diagonal, that goes through an organization. Communication networks, the variety of patterns of vertical and horizontal vertical and horizontal flows of organization communication. Next is grapevine. That's informal network of communication. Gossip, office gossip, right? This is just a pretty good a visual of the different chains of communication. Open workplaces. These were very popular probably until the pandemic happened. Workplaces that have few physical barriers and enclosures. This is still a trend, but it certainly has reversed a bit. 24/7 work environment. IT has made this possible. Technology, the internet, telecommuting, working from anywhere. Wireless communication technology has the ability to improve work for managers, employees. Social media, another great channel for communication, potentially does have its risks. Devoting a channel for information exchange about a specific topic can help compartmentalize the conversation. It can also start a useful conversation which employees can share experiences and make suggestions for creating a competitive advantage. It can also balancing the pluses and minuses. Communication and exchange of information among organizational members are no longer constrained by geography or time. Constantly staying connected has its downsides, such as impeding creativity. Being plugged in, too often, too frequently, just isn't good for your, creativity or probably mental well-being. And then choosing the right media. Even looking at something as simple as a social media strategy, obviously, if you want to write a nice wordy post, Instagram probably isn't the best for that, but maybe LinkedIn is better, or Facebook. Maybe it's better for an email. Who are you trying to reach? Managing communications in a digitally connected world, legal and security issues, personal interaction. Managers need to enable employees to communicate and share knowledge so they can learn from each other. Also an important characteristic. The role of the communication in customer service, 3 components: the customer, the service organization, and the individual service provider. So, there could be a different third-party company providing the IT support, for example. Getting employees' input, letting employees know that their opinions matter is essential first step in building effective suggestion systems. Let employees know their input matters. If you ask for their input, you have to take action. If you don't take action, then you run the risk of losing credibility. So town halls, information, training, problem analysis. Make sure your communication is ethical, and that includes relevant information. It's true in every sense, and it's not deceptive in any way. Persuasion skills that enable a person to influence others and change their minds or behavior. This is also charisma. How do you motivate people? Speaking skills that refer to the ability to communicate information and ideas and talking so others will understand. Writing skills, sometimes, I've worked for years on my writing skills, and now it's something I might take for granted. Just being able to, a key strategy might be for me, if I'm having a meeting with someone, meeting's over, I'll send an email, meeting summary. Here's 3 to 5 bullet points of what happened in our meeting. So that way we have it, crystallized in writing. Reading skills, obviously that's the reception end of communication. And that's it for this chapter. So I'll send this out now. We won't have live class on Monday. I just figured just with the participation, I could do I'll do 1 a week online, and then for the rest of the semester, maybe we'll just go on live on Wednesdays. But just a thought, I'd be curious your feedback. Thanks.